Good morning, my name is Lenny McAllister. I am the Director of Western Pennsylvania for the Commonwealth Foundation, and once again I'd like to thank both chairmen as well as all the committee members for having us here this morning. And on behalf of my teammates at the Commonwealth Foundation, I'd like to extend our appreciation to testify before you today. When Dr. Steve Perry, a nationally renowned education expert and advocate, spoke to an audience of concerned Pennsylvanians about the American education system just in May, he said this frightening statement: at the current rate of academic performance, it would take African Americans 287 years to catch up. He got that statistic from a report by the Corporation for Economic Development and Institute for Policy Studies. It also said that for Latinx families, closing that gap at the current rate would take 84 years. Now, what exactly does that gap look like? For example, a report in 2010 found that the median wealth for a single black woman was $5, while the median wealth for a single white woman was $42,600. Another report performed by Stanford, St. John's, and Penn State University showed that on average, black students across the nation scored at least 1.5 grades below white students. And in some big cities such as Atlanta and Washington, D.C., that gap is roughly 5 grade levels between blacks and whites. When we talk about education, we are talking about one of the best proven methods to close the rigid disparities that have separated Americans and weakened our Commonwealth from the onset of America's original sin. Our forefathers knew this during slavery, which is why many were tortured and killed trying to help black people learn how to read and write. They knew this during the 100 years of Jim Crow, which is why some school districts, for weeks, and some even for months, shut down in order to keep some Americans from experiencing education equality. For decades, we have known that education is the great equalizer. Esteemed committee members, any conversation that we're going to have about education in America, or particularly here in Pennsylvania, must have the primary intent of closing this gap of inequality with all deliberate speed as its paramount focus. That is our focus at the Commonwealth Foundation each day as we pursue the best solutions for all children across this Keystone State, whether those solutions are traditional public schools, community schools, charter schools, or parochial schools. And that was the focus of some of the senior members and some of your predecessors some 22 years ago when they created the charter school law. Now let's take a time back for just a second, back to 1997. Let's think about what we were facing back then. Violence had exploded across urban environments across America. In my hometown of Pittsburgh, street gangs, including the Bloods, the Crips, and Law, had terrorized large sections of the region, especially the eastern portions of Pittsburgh and many of the eastern suburbs, such as McKeesport and the Woodland Hills area. Philadelphia was dealing with a homicide rate that was roughly 5 times the national average. Two-parent household numbers continued to move in the wrong direction. So too did the economic numbers for heads of household and academic indicators for their children. Policymakers knew that the way to prevent these tragedies was to head them off from the outset. And they realized that the best way to do that was through education. Thus, school choice originated in Pennsylvania, first by way of the charter schools in the late 1990s, then through the tax credit programs that expanded through the 2000s. These options came in direct response to the woes that we faced in Pennsylvania, many of which stem from the historical inequalities in education that dogged us for generations. Charter schools were given a directive: use the additional flexibility in hiring, curricula, school schedules, and extracurricular offerings to head off the academic, cultural, and behavioral problems that we face today and help close the gaps that we have carried as a result of our collective past. Any discussion about charters in Pennsylvania must always remember this, and remember that these schools serve 4 times the percentage of African American children than traditional public schools do in the Commonwealth. A Commonwealth that has some of the worst quality of life indicators for blacks in the nation. Charters also disproportionately serve Latinx and high poverty school children. And charter schools do this at roughly 73% of the cost. In Pennsylvania, we have found that charters have been effective. Our state reflects similar results as found in places such as Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where there's evidence of improvement of test scores in many cases. And in the cases where those test scores are not significantly improved, other quality of life indicators, such as employment, involvement in the criminal justice system, and out-of-wedlock pregnancies, they all moved in the right direction. School choice is a bridge over the troubled waters that have churned up inequality for disadvantaged and disproportionately black and brown children in the Keystone State for decades. And charter schools are part of that solution. Now, if these results from these academic studies that we've gone over as a Commonwealth Foundation group are not enough, the parents clamoring for more charter schools speaks volumes. There are 30,000 students on wait lists in Philadelphia alone, thousands more in Pittsburgh. Today, well over 45,000 Pennsylvania school children are denied school choice in some fashion. Because parents know best what their children need academically and culturally to succeed in life. For example, they know that 4% of all public school teachers in Pennsylvania are teachers of color. They know that with charter schools and school choice, they have an increased chance for their children to have an academic experience that better reflects their culture. And studies have shown that if those children experience that by grade school, they have a significantly higher chance to graduate from high school and attend college. Now, for families that are seeking to send that first generation to college, that's a difference maker. Therefore, it's no wonder that charter school enrollment has increased by over 80% in Pennsylvania in the last decade alone. Now, there are ways to continue the advancement that traditionally disadvantaged students are making in charter schools and increase accountability, not just for charter schools, but for all schools in Pennsylvania, because we cannot let the errors of our past become the regrets in our future. Therefore, we ask this committee to advance the 3 House bills that seek to increase accountability for charter schools, yet without imposing punitive fees on charter schools, as the governor is proposing, or any process that's going to make it harder for good charter schools to flourish. Further, I urge members to pursue a higher level of accountability for traditional public schools as well, especially considering the recent reports of transgressions exposed by our Auditor General and others of financial mismanagement in places such as Penn Hills, where I'm a native of, the city of Pittsburgh, and here in Harrisburg as well, among others. With a balanced approach, we can meet the true mission of education in Pennsylvania, addressing the gaps that have haunted and weakened our Keystone State for generations. With your fair leadership, we can truly make Pennsylvania better for all. Once again, thank you all for this opportunity, and we welcome your questions.